The Grand Chelsea Circus is in town.
You ain't so tough with that bad boy tuck. I'ma get it how I'm living, I'ma walk the walk. Outline my lines, I rap through thought.
Well, what's happening, people? Welcome back to Football Therapy with me, your host Jan. Hope you're doing well. Genuinely do hope that. Welcome back to Chelsea News. Of course, later on this evening, I will be recording, uploading, publishing my match review, my complete breakdown of, hopefully, Chelsea 3, Tottenham Hotspur 2 at Stamford Bridge in the Premier League. We'll see what happens there. But I did want to react to these, Antonio Conte stories floating around. Of course, in the last sort of 24 hours, there was a story that Conte had offered himself to Chelsea, which since has been called false by Fabrizio Romano on his YouTube channel. And there are now reports from Football Italia that Chelsea are preparing a proposal for him the other way round, should they want to sack Mauricio Pochettino, which Fabrizio Romano has gone on to say that decision will not be made until this assessment at the summer. But Chelsea are understandably doing due diligence early doors, and trying to figure out if they can do something here. I will talk to you about my opinion on Antonio Conte shortly. It's just, how did we get here? Look, many of you will be pleased to hear the name of Antonio Conte, and also be pleased to hear things like Chelsea have scrapped their under-25 rules, so they're bending their own rules to try and make Chelsea more competitive in the Premier League, while also continuing to invest a lot of funds, which is the kind of stuff football fans would want to hear, but we also need to be realistic and assess the scenario accordingly. And hopefully we're going to do that today here, mate. So thanks for joining me. I do appreciate your presence here on the Football Therapy YouTube channel. Thank you for supporting the content by liking and subscribing. If you subscribe, hit the sweet, sweet bell, baby. Alright, man, let's get into it. Let's talk about it. Romanticism. Okay, let's talk about that. We've spoken about Tuchel. Chelsea, I said this on my Instagram when I was doing a live yesterday. I was chatting to people. Chelsea were actually really bad domestically a lot of the time under Tuchel. Of course, we were pretty competitive with a good team, fully fit James and Chilwell at wing back, Rudiger, N'Golo Kante, etc., etc. We were very competitive, but for example, when we won the Champions League, we had what should have been like an embarrassingly, relatively historical loss to Leicester in the final. We were so poor, and we got lucky on the final day that we actually qualified for Champions League. I think, was there a loss to Wolves? Anyway, there's been a lot of revisionism, right? And I think that's because Tuchel was a great character. He was passionate. Obviously, he did his body of work in the Champions League. I don't want to denigrate it. It's sensational. That Chelsea Champions League win, I know he only did half the season, but it's on Tuchel. It was, if you look at all the big knockout games, we won on XG in every single game, and we had such difficult opponents. So it was an incredible body of work in Europe. But domestically, he reached all these finals. We didn't win any domestic finals, and that's obviously bled in forwards, and we haven't won any finals since the aforementioned Conte, who we're going to talk about in a moment. But there's a lot of revisionism around, and I think when you've got to be realistic, whether you believe in the project or not, you need to accept that there's been heavy investment in this Chelsea project. And it's good, I think, that they're bending their rules to bring in more experience. But you have to accept, whatever your position on it is, that there's been a heavy investment in it, and now you've got to do stuff that goes well with it. Do you know what I mean? You can't bring in certain people that are going to go against the grain, ask for loads of additional of their own investment. That's going to put Chelsea in PSR problems, and they won't want to work with the young talent maybe. So there's a lot of stuff to consider there. Tuchel's not coming back to Chelsea. I've seen there's a bit of a movement on social media, like Tuchel back. It's just not going to happen. He won't come back and work for these owners. These owners don't want him. It's not going to happen. We will need to move on. Or I would be, never say never with Chelsea, but it would be mind-blowing if that happens. I think it'd be more likely to see Lampard back for a third spell than Tuchel. All right. So, yes, there's been a lot of sort of romanticism about previous coaches, Tuchel, Jose Mourinho, and indeed Antonio Conte. All three of them, by the way, are going to be free agents in the summer. And all of them are fondly remembered by Chelsea. Of course, Mourinho for obvious reasons, Tuchel for winning the Champions League, and being like, I do want to give, although I think Tuchel's stocks have gone down massively, and that part married with his relationship with the Chelsea hierarchy, it's never going to work. But I do want to give Tuchel his flowers, not just for the Champions League success, but also how he carried himself throughout difficult periods in Chelsea, obviously with lockdown and the sanctions. He was a great spokesman for Chelsea, and I do genuinely believe he loves Chelsea a lot. Obviously, there's stuff that we're not all privy to, extracurricular reasons why he's fired, but we'll leave that in the darkness for the moment. It's just not, he's not going to work. Mourinho's not going to work because I love Mourinho to bits. I think he's my favourite manager of all time in football. I don't necessarily think he's the best. I think maybe in isolation he's got the best European achievements in terms of, that Porto fairy tale, the Inter treble, all this stuff at Chelsea, knocking Guardiola off his perch when he was at Real Madrid, getting the first team to 100 points, I believe it was in La Liga. Even stuff like Man United winning them trophies in their recent iteration. Roma, I know Roma are better now without him, which is kind of a reflection of why, a lot of reasons why you don't want Mourinho at the moment. But he sort of supercharged them with passion again. Like Roma are only here now because Mourinho was selling out the Olympico and he got them the Conference League and all that kind of stuff. Amazing, love him. Is he the solution for this? No. Is Tuchel the solution for this? As in this is Chelsea? No. Now, is Antonio Conte? Now, many people will put a case for Conte and they'll say, right, well, he's a free agent. He's an elite manager, and he's not been on the decline since he left Chelsea, which I know Mourinho went to... Mourinho has been on the decline since he left Chelsea and won a big trophy, the Premier League. He has been. And people can make a case that Tuchel's been on the decline in that short time. But Conte hasn't. Conte went to Inter and won them the league. He was just like, here we go, no problem. And it was their first... Was it for the first time in a decade? And, he sort of begun knocking Juve off their perch, his previous team. Like, I know that was a great... I know he spent a lot of money and they were an old senior team. But he's a great coach, Conte. He's a great coach and he's available. And he's like a passionate coach. But there's still like this emotional revisionism for me. Because for me... Mourinho's not like a Chelsea... I say Chelsea legend. He is a Chelsea legend, but he's not like this icon because he went to Tottenham. I get it. He always wanted the Man United job. Everyone knew Mourinho wanted the Man United job. And he was really annoyed when Moyes got it or something after he wanted to succeed Wenger. Whatever, Man United are a massive club. But to say you would never manage Spurs and go and manage Spurs, for me, that's you got to have some integrity in football. And I love Mourinho. He's a great character, and all the stuff I said earlier a couple of minutes ago, I stand by. But the love has gone there. Now Conte does, I think he loved his time at Chelsea and had a connection with the fans. But he still just bunned us off for Tottenham. You won a title with us, man. You won the Premier League. You were amazing. It was an amazing season. I don't know. I kind of get it. He's got his right to do it. In the same way, I look at kind of Kai Havertz and Timo Werner. They won the Champions League with Chelsea. But they don't owe anything to Chelsea. Go to Tottenham. Go to Arsenal. There were a couple of German kids who took an opportunity up at heart. A big spending Chelsea, like big Southwest London, shiny, swanky Cockneys, Fulham Road, Chelsea. You know what I mean? And it's the same with Conte. Do you know what I mean? He's not a Chelsea fan. He don't care. He had a great time here, but so that kind of romanticism with me doesn't exist. Because he went to Spurs. Maybe I'm a bit old school like that. And maybe younger fans won't care and they don't feel the same rivalry with Tottenham. So yeah, fine, each to their own. But I don't have that same gooey-eyed oh, Conte, because he's gone to Spurs, which is kind of like the theatre of football and how it's supposed to be. Now, would he be a good coach at Chelsea? Probably. I think he would be the opposite to Poch in many ways in his coaching, which many people might think that's a good thing. You know, I want to reference, because Eden Hazard obviously went on the John Obi Mikel podcast recently, and they said a few times Hazard hated playing under Conte. He hated it. He says, like, it's for someone who, like, you know, loves the joy of football. And I feel like someone like, mercurial, creative, talented players, they hated playing under Conte. I think I've said this on the channel recently as well. He's very, like, he's got automated football, Conte. So he does a lot of, like, shadow play. And he takes the pressure off the players' shoulders by giving them, like, very limited choices of what to do in certain situations. I think I said this here recently, which is why Victor Moses looked like an amazing right wing back, because he just didn't have to think. He's like, right, if you go here, you do one of two things. Do you know what I mean? Maybe Mudryk would benefit off it as well. You know, like, if you go there, you either pass to him or pass to him. But if he's standing there, you do this. Done. That's all you're allowed to do. And it's like a Rubik's Cube. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like Hazard would literally reiterated a few times how much he hated it. I think people like Cole Palmer, Noni Madueke, you know, they would really possibly, I don't know, maybe Fernandes could get behind it, but I don't know. I feel like those kind of players won't like it. Even Jackson probably won't like it as well. I think someone like Raheem Sterling would do really well out of it, because he's played under Guardiola and he was always there for those cutbacks and tap-ins, wasn't he? And he scored loads of goals. He's like still the top scorer under Guardiola, I think. Or is it Aguero? I think it might still be Raheem Sterling, because Aguero obviously predated him a bit more. Yeah, man. So systemically would be like, I think like Conte watching Chelsea this season, I think he'd be literally sweating and like having like, you know, a fever dreams reaction to watching us play without the ball. Like, we're so bad without the ball. He'd obviously make us way better defensively. He'd make us a good team, but he'd also, the players won't enjoy it, firstly, but like, who cares to a degree? You just want to win, right? But he would want seniority, and many of you will back that. But he's if you look at his teams that win, they're like the oldest teams in the league. We are quite literally the youngest team in the league, and he would demand authority, seniority, and then heavy investment on players with they will carry little value because they'll be at the end of their careers, and you'll have to probably pay a lot of money to get them and pay a lot of wages. So Chelsea, who have been walking the tightrope of the PSR FFP rules recently, that is not the strategy. That is the antithesis of what Chelsea are literally the opposite of what Chelsea are trying to do. Chelsea want to be involved with sporting directors. I feel like Conte's the kind of guy that just wants a little bit like Tuchel, like, leave me alone and let me do my work. And maybe, you know, there's an element of that's what's right. But, you know, you look at Klopp and Guardiola, they work within the team, within the club, and they're like really successful clubs. And other, you know, European behemoths, there is the sporting directors and technical directors and joined up thinking, so the club runs better. But yeah, Conte isn't your guy for that. You know, the only thing that I could think is, right, well, Conte loves wingbacks, so if you can somehow get Chilwell and Reece James fit, they're Champions League winning wingbacks, he'll be like, thank you very much. And they're not too young, do you know what I mean? Like, they're like 27 and 25, he'll be like, yeah, that's old enough for me, do you know what I mean? It's the children he'll be against playing. He will be on the phone to Romelu Lukaku and be like, right, I'm here at Chelsea, come back. You know, they loved each other, didn't they? And he's the manager that's got the most out of Lukaku exploded under Conte. So he'd probably play like I'm starting to not like it, actually. He'd probably play a 3-5-2, and it would be like it would probably be because Lukaku plays in the right channel. This is just me theorizing here. It would probably be Lukaku and Jackson, because Jackson plays in the left channel. He's a left winger striker. Lukaku, he played amazing games at right wing against Brazil for Belgium. Like, Lukaku likes playing, so there'll be those two, and then it would probably be at a push. He might try and find a way to play Palmer in behind him, but I think it will be three functional midfielders. I think it would be the same three midfielders now. I think it would be Gallagher, Enzo and Caicedo, but he'd train him in such a way. He'd love Gallagher because how he runs. He'd love all of them actually. And Enzo, we remember the second season on the Conte when we won the FA Cup, but we weren't as good. He played a 3-5-2 to accommodate Fabregas. He'd play Enzo like Fabregas played, and then he'd play Matic would be like no, yeah, because we'd sold Matic and Bakayoko came in, but that Matic character would be Gallagher, maybe an enforcer, I don't know, and then Caicedo as well. But then, so what do you do with, and then you've got 3 centre-backs, we've got enough centre-backs. He'd probably Disasio Fofana on the right, he'd probably like Trev Chalobah, Levo Colwill. So you've got centre-backs, and then maybe like he'd buy a senior goalkeeper. So maybe it's there for him, but then what do you do with this abundance of attacking young, talent, what do you do with your Noni Maduekes, your Mudriks? What do you do? Because he doesn't use wingers. When you use a 3-4-3, remember, you're not actually using wingers, and we've got so many wingers. And people are talking about getting Amari Hutchison back to play in the squad. Like, yeah, good luck, mate. I don't know. I feel like all this excitement that we've had with look at the future with these young attacking players that could become good and score loads of goals and play attacking football, it would be out the window, really. Look, more than anything else, there's something appealing about Conte because he's just a big boy coach. And I thought Pochettino was, and in many ways he could be, but in terms of being a disciplinarian, using authority, being a bit old school, but also being really tactically astute in kind of what's the way to say it? He's dogmatic, but it's kind of stubborn as well, just playing in this particular way. I feel like he'd basically, you wouldn't get battered. You wouldn't lose 5-0 to Arsenal. We shipped 3-0 to Arsenal, and obviously changed to a back 3 at half time. Remember that fabled game, and just the embarrassment of that alone made us go on and walk the league just out of an angry response. Do you know what I mean? So you don't lose 5-0 to Arsenal if you're being coached by Antonio Conte. Tick. Do you know what I mean? But I think long term, in terms of being in harmony with the ownership, the sporting directors hierarchy, and all that kind of stuff. I remember Conte threw his toys out of the pram in season 2. He was making protesting lineups. The players didn't like. Willian did that post with covering him up. Hazard saying how much he hated playing under him. It took literally 18 months for everyone to be like, I've had enough. Let's not forget the Diego Costa saga. From a Conte that was really poor from him. It's just like a time bomb waiting to happen from the moment you sign him. I think he'd be more destructive than Mourinho. I think he'd be much better coach than Mourinho because he's younger and is probably more effective in present day football. But I think he'd be more destructive. And for me personally, like I said, the Spurs thing is soured it. But I wanted to talk about it because loads of people are talking about it. So let me know what you think. If you agree with me on my thoughts. If you disagree with me, great. Let me know what you think. I'll be very keen to learn your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for liking and subscribing. And I hope to see you back here. Peace.